Hey, and thank you for clicking play. What we're going to look at is F18. But it's not the game itself I want to have a look at today. The idea for this video today has come out of a conversation that started on the Amiga Facebook group. And the conversation was actually about accelerators and acceleration on Amigas. And then somebody mentioned F18 and how you get a much better frame rate under acceleration. But that made me think, because I'd remembered discussion and also noticed myself under emulation how certain games don't play quite right under faster CPU speeds. And so what I find when I look at, say, here on the Raspberry Pi, and in fact here's my Amiga 500 in the background here, and here's the Raspberry Pi running as an accelerated A1200. I'm just going to hit escape on both of those on the demo, and you'll see here how much faster, and as I talk you can see in the background, how much further ahead the Pi 400 gets. And so in this conversation, I remembered things like this, and in this conversation it had been mentioned that F18 actually benefits from an improved frame rate, but it doesn't become faster. And I thought, I'm pretty sure that's not quite right. And I just want to say at the outset here, this isn't about point scoring. I just find this topic very interesting. It's about how the game is created. It's about how it makes you think about how frame rate and let's call it game time are one if the 3D elements are developed in a certain way. Now, I'm not a software developer, so really all I can give you is my observations as a consumer and as a gamer and as a player. And as we go through today, what we'll have a look at is not just the difference under acceleration, but which is better? Why does it matter that the frame rate alters the time inside a game? That's what I want to unpack with you guys today. Now, as you can see, as I've been talking here, this has become way out of sync with this. It's clearly going faster, but, and I know lots of you are going to say, this is under emulation. So maybe it's to do with the way the emulator works. So one of my friends, Godfrey, and I do thank you, Godfrey, from the Perth Amiga users group, he saw this discussion in the Commodore Amiga Facebook group, and he submitted to me directly some footage. What the footage is of this demo running on his gorgeous Amiga 500 ACA 500 Plus, running at, I think I'm right in saying, 42 megahertz. So as you can see there, that's a bog standard Amiga 500, which is what mine is. The only upgrade to this machine is the 512K RAM expansion, bringing it up to 1 meg total. Against running the 3D graphics of F18 against Godfrey's ACA 500 Plus. A stark difference in performance. And in fact, the longer you let the demo run, obviously the more out of sync it gets, to the point where at some points in a previous test, it was over a minute apart. And of course, the longer you let it run, the more it's going to separate. That's just the way it works. But that's the demo, and sometimes demos don't really reflect what's happening in game. So what I want to have a look at next is, let's have a race. Basically, let's have a race. And so what I put to Godfrey is, let's actually pick a flight path. So we're going to take off from Airport 2 in the San Francisco Bay. Now, as I unpack this, let's just have a think about this. F18 Interceptor, thankfully, is actually based on the San Francisco Bay. It's a real place, and we'll unpack that a little bit later as we move on. So we're taking off from Airport 2, we're picking the F18, and the plan is for both of us, we are hitting the afterburner pretty much straight after takeoff. We're heading sort of northwest to then get a straight line run, and this is the race, this is the actual race, because I want the F18 at full tilt as we go due west, and we should be going past Alcatraz, flat tack, at the F18's full afterburner, full speed, okay? And we're gonna whiz past Alcatraz, and then in theory, still at full throttle, we're gonna clip past the north end of the Golden Gate Bridge. That gives us the same path of which to see what the time distance is between our two. Now, at the end of the day, we're both flying the same aircraft. We're both flying, in theory, at the same speed, so it should take the same amount of time. Let's have a look. Okay, so this is the run. We're going to go runway 2. As per the plan, we're going to go F-18 Hornet. And this is the plan. This is on the stock Amiga 500, 1 meg of RAM. Off we go for a bit of a hoon. F10 to go 100% thrust. F10 will dump you out under WAHD load, so you have to hit F9 and then hit plus a few times. Right, I'm going to hit afterburner. And let's get off the ground as soon as we can, because we're show-offs. Landing gears up, and I want it at about 1,000 feet. And I want to clip that first bridge just to the east of it. And then what I'll do is I'll line up with that first bridge, and that actually gives me a great line, as you'll see when we come into it, through Alcatraz and across the Golden Gate Bridge. Got a bit of a reduction in altitude there, so I just want to level that off. Right, I'm going to swing along the line of this first section of this bridge, and you can see Alcatraz and the north end of Golden Gate lined up there beautifully. So that is what I want. And look, at the end of the day, we're going to get the stopwatch involved. Here we go. So over Alcatraz. So our start point is going to be about there. Straight and level, 920 knots is what we're running, 920 knots. And our finish point, passing the north end about there. There we go. Fantastic. That's all I want. So let's have a look at Godfrey's run on the ACA 500 Plus. We can see straight away, taking off on the runway, that even this section seems a lot faster. And we'll note that he actually even struggles to find the same flight path as myself, because he's having to think quicker and try and use the controls a lot quicker. As we'll see when we see the final run. So pulling up just like I did, using that first bridge to line up. We're a bit further over, a bit north, but that's fine. The distance is still going to be the same. Starting from about here, and then clipping past the north end of the bridge. Okay, and just for the fun of it, this is on the Amiga Forever, running on an accelerated, emulated A1200, and there's the same run there. So as you can see there, both Godfrey and myself, both flying happily in our FA-18s, and it would appear that even though we're both going flat tack, we're both hitting maximum speed under full afterburner, we're both going straight and level. Flight path may have deviated slightly, but you know, give or take. And there's pretty much, well, at the end of the day, Godfrey's magical F-18, it did the journey in half the time I did on the A500. So let's have a think about this. F18 was developed for and brought out in the time of the Amiga 1000 and the Amiga 500, running the 68,000 CPU, running at 7 megahertz, he says, I think. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that's right. And so it would seem that the frame rate is linked in with what I would call game time. Now, what this essentially means is, if to smooth out the game through acceleration, and let's face it, it is a good thing to do, and it does feel great to play some of these older games at a better frame rate. I don't know what the frame rate is on a stock Amiga 500, but let's say it's 15 frames a second. Okay, so if the game is running at 15 frames a second and it's running on a stock A500, then a real world second is what I would call a game time second. I hope that makes sense to you. Let's say through the magic of acceleration, I managed to double the frame rate in a game like F18. I'm now getting 30 frames. I've got to think about this. I'm now getting 30 frames per real-time second, so real-world second. But I'm not only getting 30 frames, I'm actually getting 2 seconds of game time for every 1 second of real time. So I pretty much doubled the game time speed. Now, in a game like F18, it seems that everything in game stays in sync. So you could argue that if you have slight acceleration, then maybe the improvement in frame rate outweighs that improvement in time, that increase of time. Whereas there are other games that get affected differently. And it really does depend on how it was programmed originally. So when I first thought about doing this as a video topic, I had a quick Discord chat with Neil from RMC, and he'd observed this in F18 as well before, and he had this to say.
So I've played F18 on a Vampire, and I was making a fantastic approach to the carrier. I knocked the throttle down just 1 notch to play it safe, and I just dropped like a stone into the sea.
So why did a change in frame rate or even a change in game time make Neil fall into the sea? And this is where it becomes important. At the end of the day, Neil, being the quality virtual pilot that I know he would be, because he was as into flight simulators as I was back then as well, he would have been flying to a degree visually. He'd have been coming up on the aircraft carrier and visually seeing that his speed was too fast, because it's coming at twice, if not more, the speed that it should be visually. So what he's done is he's reduced the throttle pretty much to next to nothing. He's induced a speed because he's now not got enough airspeed to keep the aircraft in the air, showing how excellent this flight model is, by the way. And because of the unrealistic speed representation, he's now flying at a speed that should be indicative of landing on the aircraft carrier, whereas in fact, in reality, he's flying much too slow a speed to even maintain altitude, and gravity has taken over, and he has, as he put it,
dropped like a stone into the sea.
Why is it important that the timing remains accurate? At the end of the day, this was developed to the 68,000, running at insert correct megahertz here, and the frame rate and the time are in one, as I've said before. So if that's true, and if San Francisco Bay is mapped out to scale in this game, let's pose this question. How fast should you be able to fly from going flat tack past Alcatraz to the north end of the Golden Gate Bridge? Using Google Maps, we can measure the distance, which comes up to 4.87 kilometers, which I'll round up to 5. I was running at 920 knots, which is rounded up 1,704 kilometers per hour. The real top speed of an F18 is 1,915 kilometers an hour, but that would be at altitude, not at 1,000 feet above sea level. On the stock A500, I completed that 5 kilometer run in 10 seconds. Speed equals distance divided by time. So what we end up with is an in-game speed on the stock A500 of 1,800 kilometers. That's very close to the reported speed of 1,704. Actually, let's not forget the actual distance measured as close as we could was 4.87 kilometers. So if we redo the maths again, we actually come out with a speed on the stock A500 of 1,753.2 kilometers. That's literally within a smidge, a 50 kilometer an hour smidge of the reported speed on the instruments in the game of 1,704. So the ACA 500 Plus time doing the same 5 kilometer run, give or take, was around 5 seconds. That gives us a speed of 3,600 kilometers an hour. So, wait a minute. So not only is the stock Amiga 500 more accurate, even with its choppy frame rate, it's more true to life, but under acceleration, we are pretty much flying an F18 at the speeds that should only be reserved for an SR-71 Blackbird. We're talking pretty much Mach 3 here. And we're not even talking that at altitude. We're doing that at 1,000 feet, flying close to the water. At the end of the day, I hope that's made a point. It's a game. This thing will let you do, go flat tack with the afterburner open on the ground with your landing gear not really getting damaged. It was a great simulator for the time, but there are more realistic flight simulators out there, I'll give you that. But what matters is still accurate. The game is fun, and if you guys have fun playing it under acceleration, pretending you're a friggin' spaceship pilot hanging around in San Francisco Bay, then that's absolutely fine. Whereas others of us will have fun with a game like this, a simulator like this, trying to pretend we're a real fighter pilot and seeing what that would be like. So to us, things like that matter. To the tech nerds, frame rates matter, and everything else goes out the window, and that's absolutely fine. At the end of the day, so long as you're having fun, I think it's an interesting topic. And so like I said at the beginning, this isn't point scoring, it's just interesting. And not all games for the Amiga were developed in the same way. Couple of links I want to put in the comments and the description to two videos from Neil from RMC. One is his video on the PiStorm, where he talks about several games and how they're affected under acceleration. So please do go and have a look at that. And the other one is his video on the Vampire, and he talks, and I'll link to the particular time code where he talks in particular about his experiences playing F18 under acceleration on a Vampire, because that's where his thoughts on that come from. Really interesting videos. And I do just want to say again, obviously thank you to Godfrey for the footage and the playtest that he submitted to me and collaborated with me on, and definitely thank you to Neil from RMC for allowing me to quote his Discord chat and even giving me the soundbite. Really do appreciate your input, Neil. Fantastic. And I of course love your stuff, as does everybody, and it's a great community that you're building there. So guys, I'm sure you are familiar with Neil from RMC, but if you're not, link in the description, join his channel, sign up. Only channel I'm currently a Patreon of. There will be more, but yeah, that's how much I value his content. It's great. So what I'd love you to do is, if you're familiar with, maybe you come from a development background, maybe you worked on some of these games, please do put in the comment or even do a video response. Games that you know work well under acceleration and do genuinely benefit from a improved frame rate rather than having a distorted time take effect. Or maybe you know of some cracks for games, and also any other games that you know suffer this phenomena where Yes, they get an increase in frame rate, but unfortunately, there's detrimental effects as well that in some cases I would argue make a game unplayable. Let's expand the conversation and let's maybe even generate a list. This topic was also covered in a bit of a conversation that I noticed today in a thread on English Amiga boards, so I'll put a link in the description to that as well. Fantastic topic. I love it. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope whether it's under acceleration, whether it's under emulation, or whether it's back to being a purist and playing at the speeds these games were designed for, you just keep flying and you keep having fun. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe.